Welcome to the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. Today, we're going to talk about breath training, and I guess you could call it inspiratory training or inspiratory muscle training, respiratory muscle training, all of it. We're going to talk about training your breath, maybe looking like Bane with one of those mask things. We're going to talk about that and what the science says and see if it makes you a faster cyclist. We're going to talk about pro race prep tips, so like recon and everything else, because Ivy and I have some stuff coming up that we're going to talk about.
Oh my!
Yikes! We're also going to talk about.
Is it too late?
Yeah, not you're committed.
Oh man!
We're going to talk about balancing life and training too. So on that note, Singletrack 6, it's one of the more, I think, like long-standing and well-known mountain bike stage races in North America, at least. It's definitely known as one of the most challenging stage races in North America, technically challenging and just like, proper mountain bike terrain. We've tried to race it before. Look for Ask a Cycling Coach podcast, Singletrack 6, and you'll get podcast updates every day from us. You'll see when we posted about that back in 2017. It did not end well. Nate broke his top tube when he fell on day one on the first stage. He swears that he broke his top tube with his leg when he fell over, and and Chad and I were debating that if that ever actually did happen or if it just cracked otherwise, if his leg was strong enough to make that happen. Chad decided after day one, he's like, this is too rich for my blood. I'm going to do every other day instead of every day. I'm just going to turn to my own 3-day stage race instead of 6. And then after doing that for like 3 days, he was like, yeah, no, I'm done. I'm not even going to finish the last part out. It's too intense. And I was doing well, and then I got a concussion on the last stage. Or the second to last stage. I don't remember it. So it did not end well. Going back for some retribution. And this time, Ivy.
You did not tell me any of this before saying we should go.
I'm sorry, Ivy. I was strategic in what I communicated. I didn't want to, freak you out.
I'm full of regret.
It's an amazing stage race. It's in some of like the most beautiful terrain I've ever been in the interior of BC. The trails are incredible. Like I know Nate and Chad were like beginner mountain bikers. So far from you, Ivy, in the sense that like, I know Ivy, you say that you're like not a mountain biker, but having ridden with you quite a few times now, you're a legit mountain biker. So
thank you. Can I talk about myself for a second? This is a theme that is appearing regularly where I don't know why I downplay my technical abilities so much. I think that when I started riding trail, I didn't have a support system or someone to help me figure out what to do, and I would just kind of go out in Bellingham, Washington, go ride Galbraith, which is pretty technical and tricky, and just had the worst time and was so discouraged and didn't have any like guidance or coaching. And so I think it was just ingrained in my brain that like, man, I'm not cut out for mountain bikes. And so then even after each time I would level up in technical ability and learn something new or master something new, there was still this deep seated, like, I am bad at mountain bikes thing. That made me afraid to try new things like drops and or like technical sections. And now I'm training in the Bay Area and riding with my fellow who's really talented, like former BMX guy and really good mountain biker now, and taking me on a hardtail on trails that I probably shouldn't be on. And I'm just I'm like nailing it and feeling supported and to be like, that was a good line choice and this and that. Like, it's really just reiterating that like maybe I am better than I thought I was. And it's given me courage to try new features. And so I nailed my very first little drop last week. Yeah. It was awesome because I felt encouraged and like enabled and empowered to try it and do it and have the means to like know what to do and that it would be okay if I messed it up. And so I feel like I'm leveling up even more so. And then once I get the blur built up and get a little rear suspension, holy smokes, just going to skyrocket the improvement. So
it's that. So I had always thought that you had had like a lot of formal technical training on the bike because your fundamentals are just like spot on in terms of your body position and where you need to be on the bike. Like you have that hip hinge that we've talked about on the episodes that we did with Lee. Check those out if you haven't seen them. Lee McCormick, really good ones. Your fundamentals are dialed. So I'm
Nice.
stoked to hear you recognize that you've got what it takes to ride well. So
Yes,
cool.
thank you.
Yeah. This is going to be, so this is like probably, this will set like a high watermark in some regards for you because of like, yeah, it's like technical mountain bike terrain. But at the same time, you've done a lot of stage racing. So like so this is 6 days of racing. I'm going to break it down really quick and then we'll run through like our basic expectations. We're not going to go through anything in detail yet. Once we get closer to the race, I've posted on the forum to get people's feedback. It seems like most people want us to do like a pre-episode where we kind of break down everything just before, but we'll also mention it leading up to it. And then every day do like short little podcast episodes where we update and then maybe like a recap in terms of what we learned afterward. But okay, 6 stages, interior of BC and Alberta this year, which is pretty cool. So first day is 22.4 miles or 36.1 kilometers, and it climbs 4,052 feet or 1,235 meters. So that's like, that's the common theme for all this. That's a lot of climbing for 22.4 miles, keeping in mind that this is a loop, like it doesn't do a point to point. So half of that is where you get all the climbing. So in about 11 miles, you climb 4,052 feet, which is pretty crazy. That's a lot of up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Canadians, for some reason, don't seem to make gradual climbs. I don't know. It just hasn't occurred to them, or if they've had like 52 tooth chain or cogs for like 20 years and all of us didn't, and we just are catching up to it. But anyways, super steep. Stage 2 is 30 miles or 48 kilometers and 4,372 feet of climbing. And stage 3 is like the Queen stage. It's 24 miles and almost 5,000 feet of climbing. So it's big. Stage 4, 22, stage 5, 28, and stage 6 is the shortest one with the least amount of climbing, and that's 22. And that one's going to be there in Canmore, Alberta, which is like, I've heard, an absolutely gorgeous place. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be cool. But these are all like, it gets, the hardest day is stage 3. Stage 4 is second to that in terms of climb to distance ratio. I'll share a spreadsheet that like has a link to this, so then y'all can look at the course profiles and you can do that. That'll be down in the description below if you're watching this. But that's going to happen in July. We got some time. Ivy, what are your expectations with this? And are you scared?
Yeah, I'm pretty scared. I'm pretty scared of just getting tired. I'm kind of tempted to throw a power meter on my XC bike just because I know if I get it into the red too much on any of these, it's so easy to go way too hard when climbs are really steep too. It's almost harder to go slow. And in the moment you feel like, oh, I just got to get it over with. And it feels weird to like lose traction and like go slowly. But I know if I go into the red too much on any of these early days, I'll just be smoked for the rest of the week. And I really don't want to do that. So I think I'm just going to, I don't want to say I'm not going to race it, but there will be a lot of moments where like I want to be competitive and see the leaders and I'll want to try to go hard and I just can't. I know that I need to just keep it chill. I'm going to try to keep it for sure below LT. Maybe if I feel really good on the last day, I'll go bonkers and try to make something happen. But yeah, I'm just going to try to keep it chill and make sure that I stay on top of eating and drinking, honestly. Are you going to ride with a hydration pack? What's your plan for? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So on my Epic Evo, which I built up really like specifically for this race, I'll do like a full breakdown of that bike on my Instagram in the next, week or so. So then you can, that'll be an initial look at it. But I can't fit a tall bottle. So there's 2 bottle cages within the frame. I can fit a tall bottle in the forward facing one on the down tube, but I can't fit a tall bottle in the seat tube one because the shock hangs down a bit lower than the normal Epic did. So yeah, I'm almost certainly planning on riding with a pack, partially filled pack. I have like a 2-liter reservoir and it'll be a Usui one, the really light one that they have. And then, I'm going to have basically in my pack, I'll probably end up having a liter in there, and then I'll have the rest of the on the bottles on my bike. That way I don't have as much weight on my body as I could possibly put on there. It'll just make it ride a bit better. But it's going to be, it'll be hot and we'll have to be hitting our marks, nutrition, hydration. We'll get to all that, I guess when we get closer.
Yeah. Are you trying to not stop at aid stations?
Oh yeah.
Is this your race pack? Yeah. Are you trying to, you're going to try to go for it? Go for a result?
I think that for this race, if I finished top 30, I don't know. I think I can finish top 30. And if I can get close to top 20, that could be amazing. For me personally, that would be like a really good result. So that's what I'm hoping for. I know when I crashed out last time in 2017, I think that I was like close to top 10. I think. I could be wrong. Maybe I was around 15.
Nice.
Literally, I don't remember. Concussion happened. I literally don't remember. So that was somewhere around there. I'm sure we could look back at things and listen through, but I was doing all right. So yeah, if I could break top 20, that would be incredible. So that's kind of like the stretch goal. Yeah, I'm gonna, this is like my main goal for the year. I want to really do well at this race, and I'm really excited to do well at it too. It's like my sort of race where it's like technical riding, but nothing, I don't think it's anything overtly dangerous. It's just the sort of stuff that you just have to have your wits about you and ride well. So there's no mandatory errors. There's no big mandatory drops or anything like that. It's none of that stuff. It's just, proper mountain biking. One quick thing, last thing on this, at least that I wanted to share. And Ivy, I don't know if you have anything else, but I just wanted to give y'all like a bit of context on the climbing here. So I looked at like the steepest climbs on each day, and I isolated it somewhere below like half a mile. However, there are sections that are like 3 miles that averages somewhere between like 12%, somewhere around 12% for 3 miles. That is steep, like really steep to be climbing up for that long. On one day, it averages 20% for 0.3 miles. On another day, it averages 19% for 0.3 miles. Like these climbs just like regularly tip over 20%. And like, man, Canadians are savage. I'm going to put like, typically I have a 34 tooth chainring in XCO racing. I'm going to have a 32 on here for sure. And I'm going to bring a 30 and be ready to drop to the 30. I don't have this SRAM transmission. I just have the normal axis stuff, and that makes it a bit easier to swap chainring sizes. But I think I'm going to go 32 or maybe even a 30 on some of these stages, and that's with the 52 and back. So it's just so steep. I'll need to do it. So yeah, it's going to be pretty tough, but it's going to be a really cool adventure. The whole point of us doing this, like in talking about it here, is we want to share what we're doing to prepare, what we make mistakes at. And so then we can all learn, and hopefully all of you can enjoy seeing how we do. Ivy, what are your goals?
I swear I'm excited. I promise I am.
What are your goals or expectations for it?
Goal to finish and not cry or be grumpy or fall down. I feel like when it's not super technical, that's when especially when I'm a little tired, can really make big mistakes, because I'm like, oh, it's chill, it's cool. And, let myself check out and not pay attention and think about what's coming next in the course and make a mistake that I have to pay for big time. So I'm going to try to just keep the tires on the ground and, finish all of these stages happily. I want to have not any like big biological errors in terms of nutrition, and I don't ever want to get into that scary bonky place. So yeah, I just have to keep it chill and eat and drink a lot, and not let myself write a check I can't cash because I want to try to climb harder than I really realistically should. And then I do have some concerns about my SI joint issue, my like back. I'm gonna be camping in my Subaru, and I'm gonna get like a nice memory foam little camping pad to put in there. So I'll try to be comfy when I sleep. But I just know how tough this steep stuff is on my back. So gonna try to take care of myself in that regard and bring my little massage tools and try to stay on top of it while we're racing.
Yeah.
Or between stages rather. Yeah.
I'm borrowing a friend's van. I'm very grateful to him. Thank you, Tony, for allowing me to use your van. Because we're both doing that sort of just like, and we're not racing together. You can race this as like a co-ed team, and we aren't doing the co-ed team thing. We're doing it individually. We thought it might be a bit more interesting that way. Who knows? Maybe it would have been more interesting going the other way, but we'll just see how it goes. Maybe we'll do co-ed sometime in the future. So we'll both be like, car sleeping sort of a thing. There'll be lots of learnings to share, potentially some at our own expense, but it'll be good stuff. If anybody has insight into these stages or thoughts that you would want to share with us, or like where you think that we're going to finish, let us know. go down into the comments on this YouTube channel. You can find, or on the YouTube video, you can find it on YouTube. Just search for episode 417 of the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. Let us know how you think we'll do, what you want us to cover, and what you don't want us to cover coming into this race. It'll be good stuff. After this, or at the end of this episode, I'm going to cover, because I have a race this weekend, a gravel race called Stetna's Pay Dirt. It's a local event here, which is pretty cool. Pete Stetna puts it on. And I'm going to go into like all the different things that I'm doing to prep for that. But we're going to put that at the end. So
I'm racing Grinduro this weekend. I should have done like a similar thing.
Oh, maybe we can, since it's going to be the end of the episode. We can do that.
But I don't know. I'm not prepared.
That's okay. We'll find out.
So like typical me. I'm like, when's the first stage? I don't know if there's a prologue. Do you have to do it? Is it part of the race? What are the time sections like? I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Meanwhile, I've made the routes in multiple platforms to have cross reference if the elevation data is actually correct for each stage. So, multiple.
Yep, sounds right.
Yeah. Different approaches. It's going to be fun to see how the approaches play out. But let's get into Clement's question. Okay, Clement says, and Clement, I believe, is a longtime podcast listener, joins us on the live chat when we have that here on YouTube when we do live episodes. So Clement, appreciate you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you. If you like Clement and you appreciate the podcast, you can send in questions at trainerroad.com/podcast, and you can share the podcast with your friends. That would mean the world to us. Clement says, I'm writing to you again after a while with a question I haven't seen answered yet. Could you please do a deeper dive on the effectiveness of devices that are supposed to improve your lung function and breathing? For example, AeroFit, Power Breathe, etc. Is there something to it at all? Is it a marginal gain, or could it have potential maybe for someone with relatively underdeveloped lungs or breathing problems? Thanks from Clement. I've seen these devices all over the place. Ivy, I'm sure you have too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every once in a while you'll see someone like in a gym training or like on the treadmill or doing their workout with one on. Mm-hmm. Looks painful.
They look like Bane from Batman. It's like it's very intense. So the whole theory behind inspiratory or respiratory muscle training, inspiratory refers to breathing in, respiratory breathing out, right? The goal is to improve the efficiency, or basically like the endurance and strength of the muscles that are involved in breathing. And the concept here is that you have a finite amount of resources that can be allocated around your body to be able to perform, specifically for us athletes and us cyclists, talking about like spinning the pedals. And if a certain amount of those resources, or a larger percentage of those resources, are going toward the muscles that help you breathe, that's less available resources for the muscles that help you turn the pedals. That's like as basic as it gets. That's the theory behind this whole thing. And the theory is that if you restrict your breathing in terms of breathing in and breathing out, and force yourself to breathe through that, so that you will strengthen those muscles. And as a result, they will become more efficient, and then you'll have more energy left over for your legs to spin those pedals. So that's the basics of it. Typically, it's recommended like 1 to 2 times a day to do 30 full deep breaths with these things, and that you just make that like a consistent part of your training. Typically, it tends to be spaced out away from training, not done just before or just after. However, I have seen research where they did it in conjunction with training in different aspects. And if you do it in conjunction with, like if you're using it while you're riding your bike, chances are you're just nerfing any sort of gains that you could be getting from training at a higher intensity. And then also if you're doing it like post-workout, I haven't seen any research on this, but if you look at logic, it stands to reason that there would be better times to do it like before and separate from your training rather than right after your training if you're just trying to recover. Ivy.
Yeah. Are these is the claim that these devices are making to expand your lung capacity or to make the breaths you're taking more oxygen rich or effective? Like, what is the claim?
There are some products that do claim those things, that it increases lung capacity, and it also could then therefore make it so that you have more oxygen in your blood. However, the bottleneck in terms of getting oxygen to your muscles is almost hardly ever. In certain circumstances, sure. Like if a person does have some sort of condition, whether that's like a naturally occurring condition or something that's been brought on by other behaviors, you could absolutely be limited in terms of the muscles that strengthen or that control your breathing. And in those cases, yes, this could be helpful and this could expand your lung capacity and also in terms of what you could be taking in. However, in most cases, at least the people that we're talking to here on this podcast, all of us, we're athletes. Typically, we're pretty fit people in general. Or if you're not fit, you're not like a sedentary person. You're a person that's still active, right? So you're different from that in a lot of cases. So really, there is a lot of liberty taken with the marketing with these products for sure, Ivy. But in terms of how it actually works, or the best assumption from the research is that it's strengthening those muscles, making them more efficient. And then that makes it so that your legs have more resources to work with when you're turning the pedals on the bike. The research, let's get to that part. So does it work? In short, yes, but there's a catch, and it's kind of like a big catch. So there's a couple of them really. There's a study called Effect of Respiratory Muscle Training on Exercise Performance in Healthy Individuals, a systematic review and meta-analysis by Illy and colleagues from 2012. This is a really good one to take a look at. It's really not that long of a study too. Meta-analyses can be easier to wade through, especially if you like stats, then meta-analyses typically might tickle the nerd nerve for that sort of thing. But in this case, what they did is they looked at a large amount of studies and they used analysis to be able to find basically like critical mass in terms of specific like data points that were studied for various different things to see if this really does work. The takeaways from this study, yes, it does increase muscular performance measurements at the lungs. In a lot of, if you look at this, like they are stronger muscles, whether it's looking at any number of different measures, it does strengthen the respiratory and inspiratory muscles. That happens. However, that does not always translate to performance improvement. Perhaps more interesting to this is it seems like there's a correlation between less fit subjects at seeing improvement, and then also a correlation between more fit subjects not seeing an improvement from this. So if you're an average or sedentary person, one thing that this review found is that if you're an average or sedentary person, that there's an increased likelihood that it's actually going to be beneficial for you and improve your performance. But if you're already a fit person that trains, chances are it's not going to give you as much, or even in many studies cases, any benefit whatsoever in using these. And then another interesting thing that this study found is that it seems that there's a correlation between activities of longer durations and seeing more benefit there. And like a microcosm of this is in graduated step tests or ramp tests, when they use those as like the test to see if this all worked in different studies, it seems like it's less likely to show improvement in a short ramp test than it is compared to long, steady state efforts when you're talking about something around an hour and longer. It seems like it actually shows more improvement there.
Huh.
And I'm not really, there's a lot of guesses in terms of why that might be. With the shorter efforts, you're hitting other physiological limitations before you're hitting one that could be caused by inspiratory, respiratory muscles, pulling too many resources from your legs.
Sure.
But that wasn't tested and actually proven by it. That was just assumed by a handful of researchers. So it's
Makes
kind of
sense.
interesting to see. Yeah, right. Interesting to see. A lot of people also use these in conjunction for like preparation for high altitude. That's another common thing. Like I'm going to Leadville and yes, when you go up in elevation, your inspiratory muscles and respiratory muscles, like the whole function is impaired uniquely when you go up to elevation. That part is proven. There's a study called The Influence of Inspiratory Muscle Training on Ventilatory Efficiency and Cycling Performance in Normoxia and Hypoxia. In other words, like typical low elevation environments and also high elevation environments. This was simulated hypoxia for what it's worth, which is slightly different. However, for the purposes of this study, probably sufficient in terms of giving us the takeaways. For the methods in this study, they had 16 healthy athletic subjects. They had the inspiratory muscle training group and a control group. They both did the same sort of exercise that they ran them through, but then the inspiratory muscle training group, they did 30 inspiratory muscle training breaths. In other words, put the device in and breathe 30 times really deeply. They did that 2 times a day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks, which is a pretty long intervention. Worth noting that over the course of 6 weeks, there's a lot of different things that can happen to a person, whether it's training adaptations or anything else. And perhaps that contributed to the fact that they didn't see perfect consistency across the board. They did see like a general improvement in performance with inspiratory muscle training via the various different measures that they had, but it wasn't consistent across the board. Everybody didn't benefit equally from this. And in some cases, people just didn't improve with it. So The most important thing, though, is that they saw basically similar outcomes in terms of low altitude and high altitude. So this wasn't like this is a uniquely beneficial tool for athletes at high altitude. In terms of studies looking at people that live in normoxic environments and then go up to hypoxic environments, and if this is a beneficial like adaptation tool that you could use beforehand to prepare yourself for it, that I couldn't find studies on. If anybody can find one, let me know. But I couldn't find any studies on that. I definitely found a lot of marketing claims for that. And they definitely referenced some studies that seemed like it was kind of a loose referencing or creative referencing, but I did not see any studies that actually looked at something like that. So it's worth keeping in mind that that's one story, one study, whereas before we were looking at a meta-analysis, and that's a whole lot bigger.
It's a story. It's okay. You can say it. No, just kidding.
And it's also worth saying that like these conflicting results are common across the board. There's a study from Johnson and colleagues in 2007 called Inspiratory Muscle Training Improves Cycling Time Trial Performance and Anaerobic Work Capacity, but not critical power. And if you think about this, like this is really common to see that it improves one marker, but not another. And we all know that like human randomized controlled trials are always complex when you're talking about training interventions because everybody reacts really uniquely to different training. That's why it's important to treat you as an individual and train you as an individual. So it's complicated in terms of the results from this. Across the board, you'll see variance in terms of whether it works or not, but it does seem generally that it does improve performance, particularly in people that aren't particularly fit. If you're already training, then it's probably a bit different. And this is actually caused for researchers, Shea and their colleagues in 2022, just this past year, they published basically a decree saying time to move beyond a one-size-fits-all approach to inspiratory muscle training. And they basically say that we have these standardized protocols, but we need to pay attention to training periodization. We need to pay attention to all these different details because in some cases they have athletes that are really fit and they're doing this and they're not seeing any benefit whatsoever. In some cases, they're athletes that have a history of training, but they're out of shape. And then as a result, they see more benefit. And every other possible permutation that you can think of, it exists. And as a result, it really seems to affect the outcome of these studies. So the conclusion that we get from the research so far, some researchers have concluded that endurance training is inseparable from a sufficient level of respiratory muscle training. And as a result, it's less likely to be a benefit to well-trained athletes. In other words, when you train, you're training your muscles to breathe. And as you do more of that, it also trains the muscles perhaps to a sufficient level. And I think this just kind of gets down to the end of like the bottleneck in terms of you performing could be respiratory muscle training, or respiratory muscle effectiveness or function. But in most cases, that is not the bottleneck, or so it seems from the research. And instead, the bottleneck lies elsewhere. And that's why we see inconclusive results across the board. However, and something else to keep in mind is it doesn't seem to be more beneficial at high altitude. Stands to reason that if you have like general panic around going to high altitude and that you won't perform, that maybe doing anything like this could have a very favorable placebo effect and making you feel like once you arrive up there, you're more ready for it. But science doesn't show that it's actually more beneficial.
Yeah. What's the negative here? How much are these? Like $50? $60? I guess it depends on the
hundreds of dollars. So
like the Bane mask ones.
Yeah. So some of those ones are cheaper, and the big critique that you'll see with those is the fact that it doesn't allow you to fine tune quite as much, in the sense that it doesn't allow you to adjust separately the inspiratory and respiratory effect. They have done studies where they've looked at just training inspiratory or just training respiratory. In other words, whether breathing in is controlled and then breathing out is normal, or vice versa. And it seems like if you look at it, and one of the meta-analyses looked at this, and they found that if they're both paired, they do seem to have a greater correlation with improvement in performance. So it's probably not worth doing one or the other, instead just doing both. But when you do that, people have noted that it's very helpful to be able to control individually how much resistance you have to breathing in and separate that from how much you have breathing out. As a result, you can get like a more fine-tuned approach. And those ones end up being somewhere like, $300 and stuff. And like the AeroFit is one that is commonly referenced, and that one's definitely higher. So yeah, it's not cheap.
So if you were a new cyclist and let's do two scenarios. You're a new cyclist and you feel like you have underdeveloped lungs, or you feel like a lung capacity is an issue or a thing, and you have a few $100 to spend and it would give you peace of mind, or it might help you. Would you do it? And then transversely, if you were a new athlete, but you didn't feel like you had an issue with this and you wanted to try it, do you think it would really help them?
Number one, no, I would not do it. There's a lot of different things to spend your time, money, energy on than something that would be like $300, that when you look at the research, and it's all over the place in terms of where you see the benefits, and because of some poorly controlled circumstances, you'll see some cases where it's referenced really high. Those studies are absolutely used when in marketing. But typically we're talking fractions of a percent to within somewhere between somewhere under 3%. But the common scenario that you'll see is that we're talking, somewhere around 1%. So a marginal gain sort of scenario. So I wouldn't spend money on it for marginal gains. And I wouldn't do it unless I really am convinced that is somehow a limiter. And in terms of how you can figure that out, you can actually go and get your inspiratory muscles and like tidal volume and all this other stuff. You can get all that tested at performance labs. I believe the VO2 Master, it's like a mask that you can use that can also figure that sort of thing out for you. And you can test from there. But in most cases, it's just not going to be the sort of thing that's going to deliver a huge benefit for you. Whereas, if you look at it and just sleep for 1 hour extra, I bet you're going to see a way bigger benefit doing that.
Yeah. And I wonder if athletes that think that they have inspiratory issues are just really new cyclists and just not fit yet, And instead it's like, oh, my lung capacity isn't good. I'm not, I need to like develop this part of me to be a better cyclist, and really they could just be new cyclists that need to gain some aerobic fitness,
Yeah, it's a logical assumption. The other side of this, I bet somebody's listening to this now, and Ivy, have you experienced this when you have days where it's like your legs feel great, but you feel like you just can't breathe fast enough, or vice versa, where like you're breathing great, but your legs are just blowing up, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I'm sure somebody is thinking that like, please talk about that and figure that part out. And that's like a phenomenon that I don't fully understand in terms of, what exactly is causing that. And to think that it would be respiratory muscle training that's causing that is also a logic leap, I would say, that is rife with error there. Because when we're talking about why you might be breathing faster or stronger or anything else, that could be a number of effect of many different factors. So, and sometimes we just feel it in different areas based on recent training and a whole host of other factors. So I wouldn't just think that because of days like when it feels like it's hard to breathe that like, oh, it must be the fact that I need to do RMT and that's going to help it.
Maybe it's because you ate a bunch of rice too fast and you feel like you're dying. I'm
hey,
just kidding. Sorry.
Thanks for doxing me publicly.
Well, no, I do it too.
It's true. Yeah, we do. I were just talking before this episode how I wolfed down my lunch way too fast. So let's get into Chris's question. And if you have questions about these devices, or if you've used them actually and they've been helpful, these breathing devices, let us know. Let us know if it made you sound like Bane or look super cool too. I think there's kudo points for that. Let's get into Chris's question though. I've been using TrainerRoad for a few months now, 5 days a week, and I'm about to start my build phase. It's been very difficult to stay motivated and consistent lately due to fatigue. I work a very physical job as a mechanic, and I'm on my feet for 8 hours a day. I want to be able to compete in local races. I've never raced, and I'm new to cycling at 2 watts per kilogram. And I want to do this later this summer, but I feel I won't be able to train properly if I can't get the fatigue under control. Do you have any tips on how to balance training load with the constant physical stress of work? Is more than 1 hour, 5 days a week of training too much? That is like 5 days a week is, for somebody that's got a very physically demanding job as a mechanic. I can imagine how tired you would be after a day of work as being a mechanic, how hard that would be. Yeah, this does seem kind of like a lot. But I bet somebody's listening to this and is like trains 20 hours a week and also like lifts heavy stones going up a mountain every day. I'm sure that person exists, but this does seem like
I would say I have admiration for people that can do that, but I think it's more just jealousy.
Yeah.
People in the medical field too that work insane hours and work so much and do the most, and then are Ironman athletes or something, and just have so much capacity to train. And I feel like I'm barely holding it together. just having a normal
Same.
job. Makes me feel so soft.
Same. Lauren Cantwell, a friend of mine, she lives here in Reno, a pro like mountain biker, but also just like insane outdoors person. She's a, what do you call it? A pediatric ER doctor. So like,
Whoa.
that's like high stress, and I can't imagine. And she works at night. And then during the day, she just like ski tours these insane routes and mountain bikes and gravel bikes, these crazy routes. I don't know how they do it. It's pretty amazing. Ivy, you mentioned that you work a normal job now, like a quote, normal job. And in the sense that it's majority of the time sitting down and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Was it always that way for you, or have you been in a situation similar to Chris?
I waited tables for probably the first 8 or 9 years that I was racing. And that was really tough for me. I certainly never reached the peak of my gains during that time because I was waiting tables. Maybe still haven't. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. But that was really hard on me. And it was hard to figure out what was making me so tired with training, and to wonder if it was leg fatigue, if it was the nature of standing and running around a restaurant that was doing it, or if it was just the overall fatigue. And I think I really started to combat it more effectively when I addressed that it wasn't leg stuff. It wasn't muscular fatigue of my legs from standing and walking that was making me too tired to really, really train. It was the comprehensive fatigue. And I'm sure as a mechanic too, there's a lot of cognitive load that happens that's really taxing for you. And it's not just standing for Chris that's causing the fatigue. It's the overall physicality of a hard job and the mental aspect too that makes it hard to train. And I wish I knew if an hour or more a day, 5 days a week is too much. And it seems so individual. Like we're just talking about the folks that are doctors and also parents and also train, and they seem to manage it well. And someone like me would absolutely crumble with that, with trying to do all that and train, So It's hard to say.
Yeah, there's probably
How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, there's no like one size recommendation, right? Where like if you work this much, you should only train this much. It's definitely, but Chris, it seems like your body's sending you really clear signs that right now you're fatigued and it's too much. Like I would absolutely recommend dropping it down to 3 days a week and seeing where that goes. There's this whole concept of bracketing when you're talking about making iterative changes. And what that refers to is the fact that like you move in larger chunks than just one step. And the reason that you do that is you want to recognize an effect. And it may be an outsized effect, and it may have a big one when you move a handful of things. So in your case, instead of just moving down to 4 days a week, drop down to 3 and see if you notice a difference. And that shortcuts you to figuring out if it will indeed make a difference, because you'll likely notice the reduced fatigue or anything else that goes on there. Then from there, you can work your way on stepping back up in smaller iterations. But I would recommend dropping it back to 3 days a week and seeing if you notice a difference. There's some other things that I'm thinking of with this too. Being on your feet, like really hard stuff. Chris, I wonder, this may not be your situation if you can do it. If you can train before you work, that could be, even though it's hard to train early in the morning, that could be a beneficial thing for you, because at the very least, when you come home, you don't have to expend mental energy to think that now I have to train on top of all that hard stuff. Granted, if it like affects your ability to do your job, then you also have to keep that in mind as well. I don't want my neurosurgeon doing like a really challenging anaerobic workout before, he goes to work on me or something. And same thing with a mechanic. I don't know if you're an auto mechanic, but if you're doing that, like that's like really high consequence. Like you have to make sure that you're getting things done properly. So in my view of this, I would first drop back to 3, see how that works. Number 2, try training in the morning, see how that works. And then one of the biggest things is you're probably finishing like dehydrated, especially if you're an auto mechanic. You probably work in a spot where it's like an auto bay, so you don't have great climate control, like perfect climate control. So you're probably warm, working really hard, probably sweating a ton. So you're probably dehydrated. I would assume also you're burning a lot of calories, like way more than just like a normal basal metabolic rate. So then on top of that, you might be undernourished coming into this. And so I would drop back on the volume, and then after that, start padding in everywhere else that can make it easier. If you can train early, yes. Make sure that you're drinking electrolytes throughout the day, like a liquid IV or something like that, like some basic stuff. Make sure that you're fueling throughout your day. Like give yourself the necessary food that you need. Don't skip meals, and see if that makes a difference. And then you can approach the concept of stepping your way back up. But if you approach those other factors first, I think that's what I would suggest. But yeah, 5 days a week with a really hard, demanding job where you're working 8 hours a day on your feet, working on something that would crack me, at least. I want to be able to handle it.
Totally. And what you're saying about nutrition and hydrating too is so key. I remember having to work on that too, and would wait until the end of my shift to have a shift meal, a snake meal, one enormous, like a couple thousand calorie meal. And it's like, I feel like crap. I wonder why. Like, so
relatable. Yeah. And if you can think of things too, Chris, if you can't train beforehand, try to eat an additional like snack meal, so to speak, like somewhere in between a snack and a meal. Try to eat one, a few hours before you plan on training, and just to give yourself a bit of a tailwind if you can amidst your schedule. And that can just go a long way too. Work has a way of pushing everything, all priorities aside, including self-nourishment.
That seems like softball easy stuff, but it's stuff that even folks without physically demanding jobs drop the ball. I do all the time. Drop the ball on it all the time. Like forget to eat, and all of a sudden I need to start my workout in half an hour, and I'm like, whoops, haven't eaten since breakfast. And then the workout goes poorly, and it would be easy to point to like, well, my work-life balance is bad. Work is demanding. Like it's really not that demanding. It's that I didn't take care of myself while I did it and didn't set myself up well for the workout. That's
a fair point. And also if you're, staying up and not sleeping, doing whatever else, for hours instead of just going to bed at like an early time and a consistent time. That's the sort of thing that, once again, it's easy to point our fingers at the various different things in our lives that seem like they're like the squeakiest wheels in terms of what they seem like they could be affecting or how they could be affecting our training. However, we should look at the ones that not just make the most noise, but the ones that have the most impact. And nourishment and recovery, that's what enables you to be able to train more later on. So yeah, good thought. Good thought, Ivy. Okay, Jean's question. Jean says, I've been using TrainerRoad since December 18th, 2020, and I got a few friends signed up as well. Awesome stuff. Thanks, Jean. That's huge. That's how we grow. So we don't have a huge marketing budget. This is, you're looking at half the marketing team right now. Ivy and myself, and then we have Sarah, and we also have Maxine, and they're amazing. But we don't have a huge marketing budget. So when you share TrainerRoad with somebody, that means so much to us. So please do that. That would be huge. And you can do that if you don't know anybody that you want to share it with, then rate the app or rate the podcast. Rate it in Spotify. That would be huge. If everybody listening to this goes and rates it on Spotify this week, it's going to push it up in the search ratings. So that way more people will find the podcast, more people sign up for TrainerRoad. We can build more cool stuff. It'd be awesome. Okay, so Jean mentions, I don't ride on roads or own a road bike. Good to know, Jean. Jean says, my situation, I did see a nice improvement in FTP and also in my XCO race performance from the 2021 season to the 2022 season. I went from mid-pack 15th to 20th place in Cat 2 up to, in 2021, 4th to 10th place. So huge improvement. Way to go, Jean. It's awesome to see. And this was in Cat 2, 50 to 59. Jean also mentions that they are 59 years old. So that's a point of reference for everybody listening to this. So my predicament now is in comparing 2022 to 2023, I did not see the improvement in FTP or race results that I was shooting for. Not sure why, and this is why I'm asking for suggestions on how to change my plan. I loaded a polarized plan this weekend only to notice that the endurance rides can be as long as 3 hours. I can only sit on my indoor setup for about 1.5 hours, and it's too hot in Phoenix and Phoenix, Arizona, very hot place, to get a 3-hour ride in midweek without going up in altitude, which is not practical. So it looks like polarized is out for me. And yeah, like that's like one of the challenges, like with polarized training, is that you'll see that, you do have to put in to, since It's only low aerobic, or we're talking threshold and above intensities. You do tend to have to ratchet up in volume one way or another. And that happens on the endurance side. So I'm not getting any younger as I just turned 59. I know this is a factor in my performance. I find switching the TrainerRoad workouts to outdoors does not work well for me, even with Garmin Power Meter pedals. And we'll touch on that in a bit. I've been on TrainerRoad low volume plans, and I ride outdoors unstructured 2 to 3 times a week. Here is how I'm getting beat. And then, so that's what he breaks down for his plan. Then Gene comes in and says, here's how I'm getting beat in my cross-country Olympic races, the starts. We're going to go into that in just a bit. I'm going to go through Gene's training first, and then we're going to talk about why Gene is getting beat in starts and what he can do to change that, and what all of us can do to change this as well. Looking at Gene's career. So after 2022, so Gene had this great season from 2021 to 2022, but 2022 to 2023, he isn't seeing the improvements that he thought he would see. So looking at that, after your peak in 2022, you took 5 weeks off. Then you had 4.5 weeks of kind of on, like lowish volume, not a whole lot of training. And then you took 5 weeks off again. So if you look at that, that's pretty substantial. 10 weeks off. And then the 4.5 weeks, you kind of factor that in, that's not going to have a whole lot of benefit since you're taking 5 weeks off after it as well. So that's a lot of time off from training. And then that does end up having like a compounding effect later on in the year that you miss out on because you weren't doing that sort of training. Looking at your TSS, from the previous year to that year, not just if you remove that time period when you missed the 10 weeks, if you remove that, your TSS was lower this year than it was prior years. So not all training stress is created equal, but looking at that, you're putting less in and you're getting less out. So that kind of makes sense, right? And that's something to keep in mind. But above all, I would think that this 5 weeks or this 10 weeks that you missed, it also likely had an impact in terms of how you returned to training and coming back to it. You probably just started lower. There's a lot of value in this like year over year compound effect that happens. And I think that it's probably depreciated, like not appreciated enough by athletes. Okay. Sometimes, by the way, if you look at your training stress chart, it'll look like your training stress is high this year in certain spots. But if you look at it, you like to ride dirt bikes, and I don't blame you one bit. And sometimes when you ride dirt bikes, though, the estimated TSS is too high, like you're estimating it really high. So you're getting for like an hour and 20-minute moto ride, for example, 200 TSS. And that would have to be an extremely hard moto ride to justify that, like extremely hard. And even then, it's very different type of stress. So I'm not sure I would even, I would probably downgrade it to get a better reflection of how it's affecting your cycling training. But some other things that I've noticed. Okay, so you mentioned that you're following a low volume plan. And in some cases, though, I've seen that you've done like double days, and a couple of times, like one day you did 2 VO2 max workouts in one day, one in the morning, one in the evening. And that's always like we've ever said, if you're going to do double days, it should be one session that is of like whatever intensity is prescribed. And that next one should be darn easy. So avoid double days. That's one thing. Your survey responses also sometimes don't match the work done, where you can see, and Ivy, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking on this and like recommendations for what these survey responses might be. But performance, like you can see every interval, it gets worse and worse and worse, right? And at the end of it, you would mark it moderate when really it was clear that like, it was hard or very hard or all out for you to get through that workout. And when you rate it moderate, adaptive training is like, thought they struggled, but you know what? I'm going to trust them. So, and it trusts you. And then as a result, it ends up moving you forward. This kind of compounded recently for you where you had a rest week where you almost tripled the amount of TSS that was supposed to happen because you added on your outdoor rides. And it made it so that recovery week was almost the same as the weeks right around it. And then in addition to that, then you carried on, you did these double days, and then you rated the workouts as they were moderate instead of, when you were struggling with them. And as a result, right now, it looks like you're pretty tired. So all these things can compound and add on to each other. But the ratings thing, can we talk about post-workout surveys really quick, Ivy? So in TrainerRoad, you do your workout, and after your workout, it asks you a survey and it asks you, how did that effort feel? Those are the exact words. And it feels like everybody wants to objectify that, right? Like, and make it objective feedback. Like, what do I rate it? right?
I reduced the intensity. It was really hard. It started hard, but then I reduced the intensity, and then it was easy. So I should say it was hard because it wasn't, or moderate because I did somewhere between. Oh my gosh! Don't just.
Yes.
It's easy for athletes to overthink it for sure.
100%. And we already have an objective measure of what you did. We don't need any more objective feedback. We just need subjective feedback, meaning how did it feel? And if you answer it exactly how it asked, just how did that effort feel? It doesn't matter if you change intensity. It doesn't matter what happens. Just answer, how did it feel? And if you're honest with that, it's going to give you the best chances of getting the right workout, right? So it's like a really important detail. Don't try to think of like what it might be in terms of like, oh, well, if it's if I felt like I could handle it and it was this sort of zone, then I think that, don't worry about that. Just answer how it felt. There's one exception where I do want to add some objective criteria for this. If you have to like backpedal, take a quick break, skip an interval, turn down the intensity, that's the sort of thing where you tried everything that you could and you couldn't do it, so you made an adjustment. That's a workout where you rate it all out. That's like because you tried everything that you could and you couldn't do it. You were going all out and you couldn't do it. So if you make adjustments like that, yes, then I would rate it all out. But otherwise, and in some cases, you might rate it all out and not make adjustments and you get right through the workout, but it's just all out and it required everything you had. It's all subjective. Only thing I would add is if you make adjustments, then it's for sure an all out. Don't make adjustments and then be like, it was easy to try to like game the system.
It was kind of uncomfy. So I took it down a little bit so that it would be, oh gosh.
So you just answer how it felt. And that's as basic as it gets. Okay, looking at the outside workouts, yes, they are not being well executed. That's the other thing. For example, and looking at things using an in beta version, or I should say like an internal beta version, maybe an alpha version of Workout Levels V2, but it's one that we've been using for quite a while and we're adapting and constantly improving it. Looking at that, you recently had a workout that was supposed to be threshold 4.2 and a VO2 of 0.2. That was the sort of credit that you were supposed to get from that workout. When you did it, you actually got a VO2. It was primarily a VO2 workout. You turned it into that with a VO2 credit of 3.0 and threshold of 2.3. So you got half the credit that you should have gotten for threshold work, and you got way more credit in the VO2 work. And if you look at it, you were just surging the whole time instead of it being consistent. And they can be really hard to do. You can absolutely get the same benefit from an inside and an outside workout, but you need to have the right circumstances, and it's hard to do. So in your case, I think it's really smart to just do the workouts inside and then do your unstructured stuff outside. But Ivy, what are your thoughts looking at this athlete's calendar and in terms of what they could do that we like on the low volume side? This athlete's doing the low volume thing, and commonly on the forum it's criticized is that we're telling everybody to do low volume and add on whatever they want outside. And this is kind of like the problem with that if indeed people are kind of taking that approach, right?
Right. And adding unstructured training onto low volume is not like mid volume. And beyond that, it can negatively impact the work that you really need to be doing when you're in a low volume plan. Like we're seeing with these outside workouts, we're doing a lot more VO2 max and, doing some really taxing rides. I think when we think of how meaningful it is to do those outside unstructured rides, like with your buddies or on a group ride, those are really important and have their place. But if you're trying to do some sort of workout or hard effort or work and also doing low volume, you have to address how those are impacting your workouts during the week too, especially if you're tacking on like a 2 a day sometimes in that low volume plan. And so when we suggest that athletes add on a day a week when they're curious about going from low volume to mid volume, this isn't exactly the model we have in mind. And Gene might totally be digging the riding that they're doing right now, might love low volume, sometimes doing a second workout on low volume when they're feeling really good and doing these outside rides. If the outside workouts are hard and you don't like to stick to structure outside, then all of this is okay. What you're doing is okay if your expectations are you will not keep getting faster at the trajectory that you were prior. Or if your expectations are, I'm not going to be racing as well as I could because I like to train this way. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of, yeah.
Because you have to match the expectations, like the input and the output. You need to understand them on the same level. In this case, Gene in particular, I would recommend, and this is so like common things that we're seeing. Number one, doing too much TSS on recovery weeks. Like this is really common. Respect your recovery weeks. Like this is the time to go on mini vacation from your training and do it that week. Like if you skip a workout, for most athletes, I've seen that it's, and this is always the tricky part about generalized recommendations, and we have so many thousands of people listening in, but I feel more comfortable telling people to err on the side of skipping a workout during your rest week than adding anything additional on, because it already seems like athletes are more prone to adding on more than they should. And it's not anything like, it's not like some people are trying to get faster in their recovery week, but in most cases, just people are out having fun on their bikes. You just have to consider the fact that just because you had fun doesn't mean that it has like a negative or even like a uplifting effect to your training stimulus. Instead, it's still stress adding on to your body. So you have to consider that. Gene, in your case, I would consider reflecting on what you're doing in terms of the outside structured riding. Find out what delivers the most value. And if there's anything that's in between and it's just kind of meh and it's not adding a lot of value, I would try cutting it out. If you don't want to cut anything out and you want to keep it all, I would really recommend sticking to something that is going to be a bit easier. Maybe even stepping back to train now for a little bit and doing 1 to 2 structured workouts a week and then doing your outside stuff. And then seeing if you start to see favorable changes from it. You can use that. And that's kind of like a small step back that actually might end up yielding a step forward in your performance. And it could really help things out. It won't be periodized, so you'd have to make sure that you stay up on top of that. Being 59 years old, though, you may have experience with training. You may want to make sort of customized adjustments to these sort of things. You may have that sort of knowledge to be able to make those adjustments. But in terms of the training, you're doing too much, in short. And all of us could deal with looking at our training and asking ourselves if we're doing too much. I've recently made a change to how I handle my recovery weeks. I'm going way easier on my recovery weeks. I need it because I'm buried outside of it. So I'm making mistakes and I'm still learning. And I'm sure all of us could from that perspective. So do less, answer your survey responses appropriately, respect your recovery weeks. And if you are going to do outside workouts, if the graphs don't look like the workout in terms of the blue chart workout that you see, then you're not probably accomplishing the goal of the workout. So super important to keep that in mind. In this case, and in many cases, you're probably doing too much as a result. All right, the starts part. Ivy, I'm going to read this one, but I want you to lead off on this. Here's how I'm getting beat in the cross-country Olympic races. The starts. I'm as fast or faster than the fast guys in my class on the downs, but I get dropped hard on the starts, which are always uphill for the first mile or so. After 30 minutes, I feel better, but by then the lead group is so far gapped I can't catch them. How do I improve my starts, as my past plan did not seem to address this? I did the cross-country marathon plan this last season for the Prescott Whiskey 30, and I also got dropped hard on the 9-mile climb out of town. Looking for ideas or suggestions on how to improve my training for the 2024 season, which starts in January of next year. I'll be the youngest guy in the 60 to 69-year-old class versus the oldest in the 50 to 59-year-old this year. Any insight is appreciated. What are your thoughts on starts and getting dropped on starts, Ivy?
My favorite thing to do in my gravel racing career, which is, not super deep or whatever. I love doing the mid-distance gravel races because it's not a bunch of pros. It's, cool weekend warriors and people I like to ride with, but common thing always happens. People start really, really hard and I let them ride away and just try to ride the pace that I know I should do for the whole scope of that ride. And I just start picking them off between 10 minutes into the race and 2 hours into the race. It's hard to not start as hard as you feel like you want to, or as hard as everyone else is. That is not often how the leaders in the race really shake out for events like this. For something like Whiskey 30, that climb is really brutal. And I bet some of those folks that started really, really hard and maybe led the pace on that climb did not win. And so it's hard for someone like Gene to see a really hard start and be like, okay, I have to let him go. This is the pace that I need to do. But really, you have to. And the start might not be the part where you're losing the race. It's the fact that you did an effort. You wrote a check you couldn't cash. You went too far red when there's too much left in the race that needs to shake out, and you never can really recover from those efforts. And that could happen at the start. It could happen at a key climb or feature in the middle of the race. But if you go too far beyond what you're capable of recovering from, that's your race moment. And if you're making this start your entire race, you're never going to catch up from it. And that's something you have to develop with consistent, structured training, and to know yourself and allow yourself to get dropped if you know you're riding outside of your limits.
I could say the same thing about me with pro fields. Like I think if I was to go race nationals and race pro, I could say I could keep up. As he said, I'm as fast or faster than the guys in my class on the downs. I'd be about that with the pro field. But if I tried to start with them, I would get demolished, and I would blow up. The fact is, almost everybody, particularly in off-road races, they start harder than they should. And chances are you're also racing against people that some are faster, some are slower, but there will be faster people than you that are also starting harder than they should, which means if you're keeping up with them, you're like doubly cooked. You're going to get extra cooked here. So you simply can't buy into it. I know there are courses where that changes, where it narrows into single track and you can lose a lot of time or something like that, or you really need to stay with groups. So there are situations where it changes that, but you cannot change the fact that you can only ride so hard for the fitness that you have. So in your case, Gene, you mentioned that you're only getting older and it's not that easy. You're about to go into the 60 to 69 class. I bet you'll see things are a bit different in terms of the pace and how they start. But no matter what, Gene, you have to know that you have to pace appropriately to your abilities, not just pace to the field. And that's like the biggest takeaway. Outside of that, for the training side of things, the cross-country marathon plan, looking back, you definitely had workouts that prepared you for this with hard start intervals. So they start really hard at VO2 and anaerobic sort of intensities, and they'll do that for like 30 seconds to a minute, and then you'll settle in at threshold. Whereas on race day, what you'll probably do is you'll ride variable somewhere between threshold and anaerobic intensities for the first, 6 minutes or something like that, 5 minutes. So a really long VO2 style effort. And then after that, you'll settle into sweet spot and tempo. So what these ones do, these race start intervals of having you start really high for a shorter period of time of 30 seconds to a minute, and then hold at threshold. That is the sort of thing that absolutely prepares you for hard starts. And then aside from that, repeatability. So you've had a lot of 30-30s and different things like that. And that's the sort of thing that really prepares you for it. So Gene, looking back and also looking at some of the races that you've done, you don't have power on a lot of your races. So I can't really fully say. But my assumption is that you're prepared for it, but you're not prepared to perform at the level of somebody else. You're just prepared to perform at the level of yourself. So yes, we try to surpass ourselves with training, and we do that, but we also just can't outride the training that we've done. Like the training is what it is in that regard. But I swear, mountain bikers and gravel racers, you would have faster overall times in most cases if you didn't start as hard. It would make it way, way easier. And you'd go way faster, and you wouldn't have these huge bonks because you wouldn't be completely in the red and making bad decisions about hydration and nutrition. It's way smarter to start out like Ivy's doing at a more level pace.
Super chill. It's so hard to do. It's so mentally weird to feel like, it almost feels like you're not racing. It feels like I'm assigning myself to not race because I'm not going as hard as I could, letting people ride away from me. And that's totally not the case. It's a super weird feeling to settle into this medium hard effort. And it, especially in contrast to something like cyclocross, it's such a mental switch to be like, okay, I'm settling into this. Really, it feels chill. Am I racing? Am I sure that I'm racing right now?
What do you tell yourself to stay committed to that and not abandon it?
I mean, exactly that I have to stay committed to this and not abandon this if I hope to keep racing later today. If I do not do this now, I will not race later today. And that doesn't look like going as hard as I can later or thinking that I'm going to save up all this energy or a bunch of matches to strike at the end in some key moment. It will just look like I will be able to continue riding in and around threshold later today, and not I'm going to do this big, huge surge and then crash, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I just got an idea. I want to go to a race and I want to survey the pro men and women's fields and survey the amateur women and men's fields. And every single person that knows their power to weight ratio, I want to record it. Because my assumption is that there's a huge spread, comparably speaking, a huge spread in the amateur fields between power to weight ratios. Whereas in the pro fields, I bet that it's tighter. It's like a tighter distribution. And if you look at how a race starts, if there's a wider spread of power to weight ratios, that should also imply that there should be a wider variance in terms of pacing strategies. And, but we all race as if we're fighting for first place against, you know, at the front of the pointy end of the race, when in reality, like I have to face the music in most of the races that I do that I can't win. Like I won't be able to win, but I know where my limits are, and I bet I can find some new limits today, but it may be far away from winning. And you kind of just have to be realistic with that in order to get the best out of yourself. Because otherwise you end up just pacing against other people, unrealistic expectations. It can be discouraging, and it can just set you up for failure for the rest of the day. But I want to do that and figure out what the distribution is and see if it actually is wider. I mean, it feels like it would.
No kidding.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then that way, you know, we can all feel better and more reassured in pacing individually at our own pace instead of just sprinting against each other. So, yeah, I mean, I guess recapping, you have to pace appropriately to your abilities, not to somebody else. Training wise, you need to have repeatability, but you also need to be able to start hard and then settle in at threshold or close to it. And that's what those hard starts will do. If you don't see those in your plan and that's something you want to do, you can use workout alternates to be able to find those workouts in TrainerRoad, and it makes it really easy to do. Ivy, what's your next gravel race that you have on your calendar?
Doing Grinduro this weekend.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So is it, and it's still like an enduro style format, I assume, where it's time stages?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So you do
as
one
far
big
as I
loop,
know,
but only portions of it are timed. You don't even know.
Man. It's so frustrating because, you know, it would be okay. It would be okay if all of this is all right, because I'm not like, I'm going to win. I want to try to win. And then it's not like I'm not prepared and like, oh my gosh, I didn't win. I also didn't look at the course, or, you know, like gravel is not my primary discipline, and it's really to go and just have fun and connect with folks and do this event. And if something cool happens and I get a result, I wouldn't be surprised. That'd be fun. But all of those things, my strategy being so different from yours with spreadsheets and GPS and all that, like it's okay because I'm not upset and confused why I don't get a result, you know? Not saying that you are, but I'm just saying that my approach is different and it's done strategically because I really just don't have the bandwidth to emotionally invest in a discipline that I don't think I'm really suited for very well, that I don't really want to put pressure on myself. Like, this is supposed to be fun stuff to kind of supplement training for other stuff that's more important later. So I'm not going to overthink it and put top tube stickers with elevation and turns, you know, I'm not going to do that. And you're going to be able to start easy since it's just time stages, I assume. So there's I think there are 4 stages, an uphill climb, and then a couple of rolling gravel sections, and then a single track descent section, which I'm super stoked about. So I say I'm not going to try to like race it super hard, but I bet I try to rip that one pretty good. Yeah,
you'll go all out on the time sections for sure. I think that more races should do this whole time segment thing. Like, it's really fun. That's what I'll be doing at Stetna's Pater this weekend. It's like 72 or 73 miles, and you climb 5,200 feet over the course of the course. If that makes sense. But within that, there's 3 time stages. There's an 18-mile one with like 1,500 feet of gain roughly. There's a 9.5 mile one with about 1,100 feet of gain. And then there's also an 8.6 mile one with like 700 feet of gain. So I think that even though it's 72.5 miles, like 2.5 hours of that will be timed. And then the rest of it won't be, or maybe even less than that. But then the rest of it isn't timed. So I'm planning on just trying to ride with other people and just chill and sit in wind in between the stages and not go hard at all.
I'm gonna lay down and have lunch somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fun way to do it, man. What bike are you going to ride at Grinduro? I'm curious.
My Ventum GS1.
And setup. Do you know anything unique you're doing for it?
I did put some 50s on my gravel wheels, but the clearance is pretty tight. And it like works for sure. And even getting out of the saddle, like tested it out with the flex and everything. Like it's not hitting the chain stays. It's close, but it's not revving. But then I was like, wait, there is still some snow runoff up there on Mount Shasta. There could be mud. And so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go down to like 40. I can't remember what other ones I had, 43s or something a little lighter, so that when we do inevitably encounter mud, it doesn't cake up and create a bunch of extra brake for me immediately because of that low tire clearance,
And cut and like sanded up carbon too. Right?
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. Whoops.
I've got an absolutely probably like warranty braking hack for people on this frame. So don't at me, frame companies, but I have ran fatter tires than I should before. And then what I've done is I've used like clear, really thick vinyl, and I've just wrapped that around the chain stay and the seat stay with where mud would make contact. So in that way, if it does come up, it comes across that vinyl and it's not going to slice into my frame if it is like an issue that comes up. So I'm sure that frame manufacturers are saying, don't do that. And instead just run whatever tire we recommend. But if you do get in a pinch, that'll at least save your frame from getting damaged. So. But it still would slow you down though if you have the mud collecting, right, Ivy? So that's a good point.
Totally. I think mentally too, if I just heard all that friction, it might trip me up a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah, mentally. So yeah, I'm going to run a little bit of a narrower tire, and I'm comfortable on them anyways. Like I ride under biked most of the time anyways, so I think I'll be comfortable. Yeah.
Nice.
What are you doing for pay dirt?
Well, I wish that I had like a good cross or gravel bike that I could run like 50s on or like mountain bike tires on. That would be the ideal setup for me personally. I think that if you're a good bike handler, you could get away with that, or a hardtail mountain bike actually might be best. And if you had a hardtail, you'd probably just want to run some like slightly faster tires, like some semi-slicks, like the Vittoria Terreno Dry might be a good option, which I've heard that.
No dropper.
No dropper. I'm not running a dropper. I don't have that set up. So instead I just have my Epic Evo. I think that without a dropper and everything else, I think that it'll still be like 22 pounds. So a light mountain bike. And I'm running some tires. I won't say what tires I'm running. I'm not trying to hold it from anybody, but I also don't want to get people in trouble. So I'm running some fast tires, I guess, on my Epic Evo. And then I'll run it without a dropper. And I'll run it like locked out for most of this course as well. But this is kind of a cool one because it's like chunky and like sustained power for the first one. It's like an hour and 10-minute effort. And then after that, I think I'm going to have like a 40-minute effort that's going to be, that first one's really stable. And the 40-minute effort is going to be punchy nonstop because it's really fast rolling single track where you can lose traction. It's kind of like hard surface.
Whoa.
So you kind of have to like punch over and over and kind of like ease up going through turns. So then after that, it's a super like long sandy one. So you can't drop down in terms of power. Your floor is going to be sweet spot or threshold, but it has really hard surges on the last one. So really dynamic. It's going to be a ton of fun. And so I'll be riding my Epic Evo. My tires will be too fat, but I don't have other options right now. So that's just what I'll use. And it'll be slow on the pavement, but nothing's on pavement for this race in terms of time segments, so I don't care. It'll be a good time.
Is this going to be your longest mountain bike ride ever? 72 miles?
No. My longest mountain bike ride, I think, is like 102. So, at Leadville, 104.
That's right.
I think that's the longest one I've done in terms of on like a dirt course. So, yeah, it'll be a big day. But it'll be a fun day. If you're going to do that race, I'm stoked to see you. If you want to do that race, You should. It's going to be a ton of fun. If you're going to be at Grinduro, say hi to Ivy. And if you appreciated this podcast episode and the takeaways in terms of the science on breathing, and then us getting into, of course, all the details and how to balance life and training, and also some pro tips on how to prepare for hard starts, all that stuff. If you appreciated it, go to TrainerRoad.com, sign up, share it with your friends, review this podcast in the app, give it 5 stars. And if it doesn't deserve 5 stars, just let us know what we should do. Submit your questions at TrainerRoad.com/podcast, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.